For me, feminism was a huge part of veganism. I would have stayed vegetarian probably forever without the feminist piece, because it was recognizing that these are female bodies that are receiving the majority of this abuse. I mean, obviously the male bodies are being abused as well, but for the cheese that I loved and thought that I could never give up, that is a product of forced insemination and then removing this baby from its mother and then repeatedly raping and stealing this female body's baby. So for me, the penny really dropped for veganism after vegetarianism in a big way with feminist consciousness.
As a vegan, do you ever feel like you're living in a parallel universe, aware of things that many others don't even seem to notice, let alone acknowledge? I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse podcast. We talk with vegans from around the globe who, like you, are living lives of integrity and compassion with an eye toward justice. Through their personal stories, you'll come to see that you're not an outlier. In fact, you're part of an entire posse of individuals who aren't just keeping the peace, they're creating it through their food choices and beyond. You won't be saddling up, but you're in for the ride of your life. Welcome to the Vegan Posse. Hey Posse, I'm your host, Chrissy Benson. We've got some really interesting episodes coming up for you on the Vegan Posse in the next few months, so stay tuned. In this episode of Posse Talk, the regular monthly series I do with my friend and colleague, Dr. Jen Howk, I had to do a whole lot of editing for purposes of self-censorship. If you're interested in hearing me uncensored and in speaking freely yourself on a live, unrecorded call, join us for Vegan Peace, which happens every Tuesday evening at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 5:30 p.m. Central, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. It's a place to find your peace, speak your peace, and connect. And you've got an open invitation. Just use the link below. If you haven't yet done your part to make the vegan women's fiction classic, Marrying Myself by me, Christine Melanie Benson, an international bestseller, and thereby help normalize veganism through the arts, wait no more. Pick up your copy today on Amazon or through my website, ChristineMelanieBenson.com. And now, without further ado, enjoy this episode of Posse Talk with Jen Howk. Jen, welcome to the Vegan Posse. Are you ready for the ride of your life?
I'm ready.
Yes, I can see that. All right. Well, what's going on with you these days? Anything in particular on your mind regarding veganism or life or love or just the world in general?
Boy. It's funny.
That's not for an open question.
We have the little pre-session chat about it's like, well, we don't have a topic. We don't know what we're going to talk about. We'll figure it out. And then you're like, Jen, what do you have? I feel like
I threw you under the bus. I did.
It's, I don't know, so often throughout the year, it just feels like you're just kind of in get through the day mode, just get it all done. I've got a lot going on at the moment. So I don't know. There hasn't been a whole lot of time to reflect on the bigger.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's okay. I have plenty to bring to the table. It's not all on you. Yeah. No, I was just curious if anything was at the forefront. But I guess something that I've been thinking about lately is we've talked on this show and just in general conversation about how in some ways it seems like a pendulum has swung in terms of the world's openness and friendliness to veganism and vegans in general. And, not that we were ever the in crowd before, but in many ways, a lot of indicators suggest that we're really not the in crowd anymore. Yeah. And I've had a few people in my circles kind of like trying to be supportive in that way. And, one of them in my professional realm, she was saying, I think, I hear a lot of people being really mean to vegans, and I just think it's stupid. I just think it's wrong. And on my end, okay, I get that she's trying to be supportive and I appreciate the intention. And what I said to her was, thank you. Honestly, I I don't really care if people are mean to me. It's
Mm.
just, to me, it's unfortunate what that indicates about what they're going to keep doing to animals.
Right,
Again, we vegans are not the victims as I see it.
right.
It can be annoying to be excluded and not considered when there are group meals or that sort of thing, but ultimately people can make fun of me. That's not the issue. The issue is what that indicates about people's attitude toward animals. So yeah, do you have any thoughts on that subject, or have you experienced that dichotomy yourself at all?
That's such a consistent thing, that happens in the interface between the vegan world and the non-vegan world. I think that's just the kind of go-to strategy that people have for relating to us weirdos. They haven't reflected at all on the animal suffering piece of things. So I think the only thing that they can wrap their head around is, oh, well, I can express some compassion for you. Like it must be so hard to live that way and such a challenge. And yeah, over however many decades now, I've run into that a lot. And I don't know, at this point, I'm sort of in such a, spending so much time in such non-vegan spaces, such like, normie spaces, for lack of a better term, that it really has been a wake up call. I've spent most of my time in the last decade, at least, really in a bubble. And so getting out of the bubble and recognizing, oh yeah, the rest of the world really does not speak this language, does not think about these things, does not think about them in the same way. I was just at the farmer's market this morning and, interrogating the woman whether her sourdough is vegan. And she's like, oh yeah, I love to eat this, with butter on it. And I'm like, well, we're vegan and actually probably won't do that. And lots of other delicious things you can put on it. And she's like, oh, vegan, how long have you been doing that? I'm like, oh, like almost 25 years. And she's like, whoa, you've really stuck with it then. And she just had no idea really kind of what it meant or what was involved. And it's like, I'm automatically perceived as a burden. Like, wow, you really, yeah, that's amazing that you can do that you have the self-control, that you have the discipline, all these things that we've heard. So, but I think this is just human nature. And it's human nature for people who have not thought deeply about the animal piece of things, that this is the best way that they know how to express concern and care. So I don't know. I see it maybe optimistically. Maybe I'm having a more optimistic day than usual, but I see it sort of as an important step on the road to building greater awareness and consciousness. If they can start with that, then maybe they can expand some consciousness around the animal issues over time. We hope.
Yeah, and you're very good about helping people preserve their status and
Yeah, yeah,
letting them have that status as being considerate of you, poor vegan you.
right.
I'm I just really get prickly around that attitude.
I understand that too.
But it's interesting what you say about the bubble that you've been in. Yeah, it's just interesting being in that position, which we vegans are in a lot. And that's partly why I brought back my vegan peace group as a place
Yeah.
where people can air these sorts of quandaries and just kind of brainstorm and share experience and at the very least vent about it. But it really is interesting how much it comes up, and also just as we started with, just the general attitude toward vegans currently, which again to me does feel different from
Mhm.
just a few years ago. Like, is that troubling you at all? Are you feeling that, or are you just kind of
I sort of feel like
get
I'm
used
either
to it?
in the bubble or I'm not. Like if I'm in the
Mm,
bubble, it doesn't really matter how the trends are changing. And if I'm not in the bubble, I think I'm so far out of the bubble that was never, veganism was never cool
yeah,
outside of the
yeah,
bubble.
yeah.
So, I mean, I just live in small town America, it's just not a thing. And so it's not as if my daily life, what I'm exposed to, is really that different, whether veganism is a little up or a little down.
Yeah.
But being outside of the bubble really is, yeah, it's been a long time since I kind of experienced that. So, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What are you learning being outside the bubble?
That it's just quite the blast from the past. I mean, I feel like it's 2004 all over again. It's like, oh nope, that's not what that means, and nope, that's not vegan. And I appreciate the gesture, but no, I can't eat that, or I won't eat that. And it's a lot of those old tricks that I relied upon in those very early days have to come back around. Like, these just, there's not going to be a lot of opportunity for deep education here. There's just kind of, how can I explain things in very general terms that are going to be memorable and land in some kind of real way. So yeah, it's interesting. It's not something I had expected I was going to have to re-experience, and it's a little demoralizing that it's exactly the same now as it was that long ago. That the world at large has not really evolved much beyond the paradigm. And if anything, I mean, yeah, with once you're out of the bubble, you're also you hear all of the sort of other things that come along with that. So not only is it sort of hostile to veganism and very normalizing of things like zoos, but it's also very normalizing of things like, well, you need to eat a lot of protein, and plant protein is not complete, only animal protein is complete, and like these tropes that get trotted out. I'm like just sitting there going, really? This is what we're doing? But, it is what it is.
Yeah, I had that 100% last weekend when I was back at my college reunion. And I went to a prestigious university where people supposedly have pretty high levels of intellect and education. I mean, founded by Thomas Jefferson, of all people, all about freedom and
Right.
personal autonomy and self-determination and all
Yeah.
that good stuff. And so,
He
yeah,
did have
it
to
was,
as well.
pardon me, what, yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
he talked the talk well, but yeah, his personal
yeah,
life.
no, obviously a lot has has not just come to light, but been acknowledged about the many ways that he was a flawed human being, a flawed male, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
I take your point that it should be this enlightened place of education and
Well, I
reflection.
just thought it might be a little bit, and again, it's in Virginia, in the South.
Yeah.
Like, I guess I thought it would be at least as vegan conscious as Nashville. And maybe the younger students, I mean, I'm hoping that among the younger students, there is a more vegan presence and more vegan consciousness. Reunions, of course, are all the old fogies coming back.
Yeah.
So they're not exactly the cutting edge folks. But nevertheless, it was really interesting. Just at all of the group meals, I didn't see one other person avoiding the animal flesh,
No, that's a
the
good enough.
plethora of dairy laden stuff, the egg stuff.
Mm,
My friend who I was there with, I know that she's on the protein train and the low carb train, and that her impression of healthy eating is just so problematic that I just don't say a word.
yeah.
There's just no touching that with a 10-foot pole. I am hoping that the younger students, at least in the dining halls, maybe there's more consciousness there. I mentioned that hope to my sister, who's a nurse in South Carolina, and she said, well, I work with tons of people in their 20s and early 30s. And she said, I don't hear it among them. She said,
Mm.
all I'm hearing is protein, protein, protein.
Protein, protein, protein. It's so crazy that we're
It's
still,
so crazy. We're
I mean,
still on
I
that. Yeah.
really thought that we had moved on beyond that whole paradigm with proteinaholic, and like, have we not put this to bed? But we haven't, because it was all about fat for a while. It was all the keto was, you want the high fat diet and you need to eat your fat bombs, and
Yeah.
they were even among themselves saying, "Oh, we're not all about protein." And I remember my mom giving me this line because she was very much on the whole kind of paleo autoimmune protocol thing, and about how healing animal fats were, and how it wasn't just about protein. And we actually don't eat that much meat, it's all about fat, 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 fat. And so even that has changed back to protein. We're back to protein. We're just back to the flesh. It's really,
Yeah.
really disappointing. And I remember one of my first sort of aha moments in my very early baby vegan days was that, calorie for calorie, there's more protein in leafy greens and broccoli than there is in steak.
Yeah.
I just remember thinking that was the craziest thing I'd ever heard in my life. Like if you're worried about protein, you should be definitely focusing on the things where per capita you have a higher percentage of protein. But
Yeah.
yeah, that talking point has never really seemed to penetrate the void, and neither has the idea that all of the largest and strongest animals on the planet, they're all herbivores. Like it's bizarre. It's bizarre.
It is. Yeah. It is bizarre. And it also doesn't make me very impressed with humanity, which,
Exactly.
goes to reinforce my veganism because if
Exactly.
we're not that special,
I did
then,
see I wondered if maybe the tide was turning back in the other direction. Although, of course, I think it's premature to say that. But my news feed gave me an article in GQ of all places in the last month or so about. I think the headline was something like, "Are we protein maxing too hard?" And it was a discussion of some bro who goes to the doctor with weird symptoms and is told that he has gout, and like, well, I have gout, how is that possible? I'm so healthy, I'm a gym bro, I eat all my protein. And the doctor's like, yeah, you're probably eating too much protein. And so it was an interesting discussion just to acknowledge the idea that, yeah, it is possible to eat more than your body can use, and then you're going to create some problems within that very bro culture. So I don't know. Maybe there's still room for improvement. Maybe not.
yeah, that is one of the conditions where they actually mention about eating meat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that anybody seems to change anything when they have it, but meat and alcohol is
Right.
mentioned
I think in
when
my
they have
ex's
gout.
case, it was definitely the alcohol is what got him.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, disease of kings. It's indulgence. It's eating a lot of very rich food and a lot of really rich alcohol.
So on a more granular level, how are you doing with gardening and just the conundrum of all the little creatures that are affected
Yeah.
when we garden?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I do a pretty good job of not harming many little creatures when gardening. The most critter harm that I have done gardening is when I had a greenhouse. There were a lot of insects that would get stuck in there and could not find their way out.
Mm.
Um, and I'm setting up another greenhouse in West Virginia, and I need to think about how to vent it in ways that they can get out of there if they want to. But of course, it's another kind of cheap greenhouse, and it's hard to arrange for that. But otherwise, I mean, I think on balance, I'm creating more habitat and creating more food. Definitely, I've been watching Gordo, my squirrel, systematically strip my peach tree of every single. They're nowhere near ripe. They're not going to be ripe until, I think, last year it was almost September when they started to get ripe.
Oh, wow.
But he's after those pits. He wants the pits. And so he's
Why does
just
he want the pits?
they're nuts. They're higher caloric density and delicious nuts.
Oh,
Like,
they can eat peach pits?
yeah, well, I think they want the seed inside the pit.
Oh.
So it's like I think that's what an almond is, right? It's the seed inside of the pit.
Oh, I
And
did not know that. Okay.
on a regular peach pit, like when I've planted peaches from seed, it's advised that you crack the pit first and pull the seed
Oh.
out, which looks like a little almond.
Oh.
And so I think that's what he wants.
That's so interesting. I had no idea. Yeah, there's so much about plants and like how they grow that I am completely oblivious to. Like I
Yeah.
remember the first time I saw Brussels sprouts on the stalk.
Oh yeah,
I
those
was
are
like,
crazy looking. If you,
"Oh, wow. Okay,
yeah.
so that's how it works."
Yeah, that was not at all how I pictured Brussels sprouts growing, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's everybody's just feasting on. I can't grow. I've been trying to grow greens in the garden; they just get eaten as quickly as I plant them. The tomatoes are heavily reinforced with some cages right now, so hopefully we'll get some tomatoes. But I try. I mean, I don't use any kind of pesticides or herbicides. I don't even use natural pesticides like people will use neem oil and things. I don't use any
Hmm.
of that. Um, and so my hope is that on balance, I'm creating habitat, I'm generating food, I'm helping out the little critters. Um,
Yeah.
I did have a bunch of thoughts today driving home. There was just so much roadkill. It was really kind of shocking how much there was. And um, I always try to do at least a slow roll if I can past the possums because they often have the babies that are the moms are
Oh.
carrying the babies and the mom gets hit, but the babies are still alive. And
Oh.
and this one, like, you could see that babies had been run over in addition to the mom, so they probably had been okay and were trying to make it to
Oh.
safety and did not make it to safety. And I just like had to pull over and take a moment after that because I love the
Oh.
possums so much. Never really have lived around possums before moving here, but they're very, very special. And they don't live very long. Their natural lifespan is only a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And,
Really?
and they eat enormous amounts of ticks and they're just super
Mm.
beneficial animals to have around. And
Mm.
you just see them constantly. You see squirrels constantly. There's one squirrel that I have been honking at almost daily because he has been recklessly scurrying across the road. And there was a recently hit squirrel in that same spot when I went out today. So it's probably him. And then of course all the deer, you see fawns that have been hit. And I know that, things happen and sometimes it's unavoidable, but I think also there's just a lot of carelessness. There's a lot of distracted driving. I can't remember if I told the story on the posse recently, but we have sort of turtle crossing season here in early spring where there's just
Mm.
turtles trying to get from one side of the road down to the water usually. And you have to be really mindful of them. They're obviously moving very slowly and they're in the middle of the road. And I drove past one in the other lane and I pulled over to turn around to go pick him up and help him across. And it was like a scene out of a movie where I was waiting to pull back into traffic and this truck passes me by and the woman driver is just like laughing and distracted, and it was just like in slow motion that I watched her run right over that turtle. It was just
Oh.
awful. And so there is a degree to which people can be more careful. And around here too, I mean, I think just like when I grew up in Alaska, people, there's sort of a sport to it, like, oh, can I hit that squirrel kind of thing that is teenage entertainment. But also it just got me thinking about like, what are we doing with our built environment? And, this is just not, this isn't our earth. It isn't our, like how awful are we for committing this kind of genocide on these animals, to say nothing of all the bugs that we hit every year. So I don't know, just some thoughts I was having this morning where it seems like, well, it's just unavoidable. That's, you got to drive to get to work and this is what has to happen. But sometimes we just need to really step back and question the whole premise of what we're doing and how we're living and motorized vehicles in general and all of it. It's just all so awful.
Yeah, I have similar experience on my commute to work because it's along this narrow country road and traffic in both directions and lots of roadkill.
Yeah.
Um, and yesterday, I think it was just a couple of days ago, I was driving to work and there was a dead raccoon in my
Mm.
lane. And he was like, there was blood everywhere. He was clearly dead. But normally I wouldn't have rolled right over him
Yeah.
nonetheless. But there was this massive truck barreling in the other direction. I had no room to maneuver in my lane. And
Yeah. I
so
always swerve,
just,
even if they're clearly dead, if I can. I don't want to
yeah.
add
Oh,
insult to injury. And
yeah,
if there's a
exactly.
place I can pull off and the animal is relatively intact, I always try to move them too. But sometimes you can't on those narrow roads where there's no
Yeah,
shoulder.
there's no shoulder, these sharp bends. I mean, it's
People are
like
dragging
taking
my
your life in
feet.
your
Yeah.
hands even just to drive on this road. But yeah, I
Yeah.
see lots of dead animals there. But on the subject of the bugs, it was really funny the other day. This young kid knocked on my door and he was there to talk about a pest service.
Oh, gosh. Wrong
And
door to knock on.
yeah, well, and I said, I'm vegan, so I don't like to kill bugs. He's like, oh, my mom is too, and it's eco-friendly and it doesn't hurt animals. I was like, but it kills the bugs, like it kills the actual bugs. He's like, oh, so you like bugs living in your house? And I was like, well, I find other ways to kind of oust them, like using cinnamon to deter ants or other bugs. And it was a several minute long, not very productive conversation, but it was really funny because clearly to him, bugs were outside the realm of
Right.
any concern. Like, this doesn't hurt animals. Well, it's there to kill bugs. Like, it's supposed to kill them. So
I mean, I think that's true for a lot of vegans too. This may be a bit of a hot button topic for some of our listeners because, I mean, I was vegan for a while before my circle of compassion included bugs fully. And really, it was not until living here, which is like just bug freaking central. Like there are so many bugs, some of which are quite spectacular. And it's and doing all of the gardening that I do and getting to know the bugs and also watching different kinds of bugs be drawn to the environment as I let it go crazy and plant new things. And it's just wild. I mean, it's the numbers are amazing, and they're just very interesting to watch. And I do get stung and bitten quite a bit, which is not the most fun thing in the world, but I have a
mm,
whole different relationship with insects now than I did, even 3 or 4 years ago, where I really would not have thought much about squishing a mosquito that was biting me or squishing a tick or something like that. Where now, I pull the ticks off the dogs and I just kind of like, I assume that they survive their fall. I drop them off the side of the railing on my deck. Like, you can go back out there. But I don't, I would have a hard time just squishing them for the sake of squishing them. So, and certainly I have a little speciesism where I definitely would not squish a spider, definitely would not squish a bee. I learned very recently, in fact, that honeybees do not necessarily die when they sting you. So they can unwind their stinger if you give them
oh,
time, which
oh,
requires you sitting there in pain because their stinger is in you. But if you don't freak out and you don't smush them, or you don't brush them off of you, they can
huh,
sit there and twist out that stinger and fly away.
huh.
So it's quite remarkable to watch that happen. I saw a video of a beekeeper who was doing it.
Wow. Have you ever done it?
No, I have not had the opportunity. I grew up just hearing if you get stung by a bee, they die. They can't. The yellow
Yeah,
jackets
me
are different
too.
story. The yellow jackets will sting you repeatedly in the same place, and so I feel a little differently toward them. but
Yeah.
but yeah, I haven't had any honeybee stings. I think since I've been here, they tend to keep to themselves. But I've had wasp stings, I've had yellow jacket stings, I've had random spider bites, like all kinds of things. So my arm was like super, super swollen last week from some spider bite, I presume.
Oh,
So it's just
wow.
kind of it's country life. I just sort of assume in the
Hmm.
summertime I'm going to be covered in bites, and it's a thing. And I understand that I have a really different framework around this. Like, I have no problem going out into the woods and realizing I'm going to come back covered in ticks. Like, the ticks are just going to they're going to have their fun. I'm going to be covered in them. But, I pick them off. I just like pick them. And usually they have not embedded themselves within an hour or so. And
Hmm.
sometimes they have, but they haven't been there that long. They haven't had a lot of opportunity to transmit disease. And so I would rather kind of go out there, have them land on me. They're wandering around, or the dogs, rather than taking, giving the dogs really, you know, high intensity pharmaceuticals, or spraying myself with permethrin or wearing permethrin socks or something like that. And I totally get that this is not the cost benefit analysis that everybody runs, especially people with a history of Lyme disease or other things, that people have to find a different balance. But I don't know, the sort of shift in my consciousness around insects and also my unwillingness to pollute the environment with anything that shouldn't be there kind of just leads me to this conclusion. And part of that means I spend the summer kind of covered in bites.
Mm. Yeah, my dad has this thing going on where he's like really, really sensitive now to mosquito bites, like
Mm-hmm.
almost sort of allergy. And
Yeah.
it makes his life miserable, miserable.
Yeah. 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 I have gone through phases, and growing up in Alaska, the mosquitoes are next level,
Hmm.
where I've been pretty sure that I had a mosquito allergy. I will say mosquitoes were much less of an issue for me when I stopped drinking, that something about,
Hmm.
what I was exhaling was sweeter and more attractive to them when I was drinking. And I tend to have a less inflammatory response to their bites now, but I've
Interesting.
definitely have been there, but I think diet can make a difference. And the thing with mosquitoes is you just like, stay near a fan and they can't get to you. They can't fly against the fan. They're very light and kind of bulky and weirdly shaped. And
Mm.
so if you have a good fan on you, they can't touch you.
Hmm. Okay, I'm gonna have to mention that to him because I know he's just, yeah, miserable. Yeah,
Yeah.
because of this in
Yeah.
certain
I,
months.
I totally get that. Yeah. Mosquitoes are no fun.
Yeah, no, the bug question is interesting. I don't know that my feelings about it or my behavior has changed that much over the course of my veganism. I mean, even as a kid, long before I was vegan, I was
Yeah.
taught that spiders were good, that bees were good, that ants were good, that a lot of bugs were good. So especially like daddy long legs. So I always felt very friendly toward them. And also I read all the kids' books, like
Yeah. Which I
Cricket
think
in Times Square.
I loved Cricket in
Cricket.
Times Square.
Oh,
Yeah.
I loved
That
it.
was such a
Yeah.
good book. I think
Yeah.
you might be the only
Chester,
person
I
who's
think
read
was his.
it. Yeah, I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, yeah. And then even just as an adult, I'm not going to claim that there is some species of them for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, even here in Tennessee, there's the brown recluse, the spider that's poisonous, and that bite can be really harmful, even deadly to people. And
Yeah.
I didn't know what they were when I first moved here. I thought they were another daddy long legs.
Mm,
So I was just regularly seeing them, but just humanely transporting them outside the house,
yeah.
which is what I still do when I see them. But yeah, it is interesting, the attitudes. And that's not the vegan sword I'm going to die on, is asking people to
Right. I think
afford bugs the same level of
totally.
consideration, but they're
That's
also not forming the majority of our so-called food systems.
well, I mean, if you do look at it from a pure utilitarian lens, which I don't, it's not how I organize my worldview, but the amount of insects that are killed by human habitat and human agriculture and driving and all of it
Mm,
dwarfs other forms of animal
mm,
agriculture just in terms of sheer numbers. And
mm.
we're also farming insects for food, for pet food and for other kinds of things. And so there are entire industries that are building up that are looking to insect protein as the protein
Yeah.
of the future. And so there is a lot of harm being done and a lot of good to be done by bringing more awareness to the issue. And there's research showing that insects have rudimentary consciousness. They remember things. They certainly feel pain. All of this kind of stuff. So,
Hmm.
um, so if you think of it in those terms, it is a pretty big frontier for the movement to be paying attention to, and for people to eventually come around to some knowledge and awareness of. But as you say, it's a big heavy lift for your average Joe who can't, doesn't even think of a chicken as deserving of any kind of
Yeah.
compassion, to go from that to black soldier fly larvae or to crickets or anything like that. It's really, I think we're a really very long way from that.
Yeah. It's funny because in some ways it's a big lift. And then there are people who are very willing to exercise such a show of compassion for the bug that they find in their living room, but
Yes.
still
Yes.
are eating the
Yeah.
dairy and the
Yeah.
flesh and the eggs and all that.
Oh my gosh. I have a friend of a friend who had a big social media post recently displaying a huge amount of concern for an animal, a wild animal on her property, and all of this rhetoric around how I just can't bear to watch an animal suffer, blah, blah, blah. Like, what is on your plate? Three times today, what do you think? How do you think that animal got there? Like, I applaud the fact that this touched you and that you felt something and that you wanted to take action and you wanted to protect this animal. But how can this cognitive dissonance exist? It's just a really remarkable thing.
It is. And also the bug question that comes up in a lot of the pro meat circles, like,
Yeah.
oh, Bill Gates,
Want
they
to
want you to
be
eat
a
the
bug.
bugs.
And
They don't want you having a steak. And they're like, no,
yeah.
they want you eating bugs. And the solution, true freedom, lies in eating meat. Like, those are the only options.
Don't forget the raw milk to wash down your meat. You got to have the,
Mm.
the meat and the secretions for a full meal. No, it's true. It's been completely politicized in that way. And it was always, I mean, veganism was always granola, crunchy, lefty coded, but there were more exceptions to it. There was some libertarian overlap. There was a bigger tent and people could fit under there with different ideologies. But now it really does seem to be perceived, generally speaking, at a cultural level as the domain of the globalist soy boys who want to tell you what to do and want to curtail your freedom to have your backyard chickens and to eat your meat and thrive. Big badge of honor here out in the country is people are like, well, I can solve all my problems by getting more chickens. I'm a chicken lady. I just love my chickens. And like, a funny way of showing your love.
Well, yeah, in our final few minutes, you kind of reminded me of one question that I had for you in general, which is for a while we were hearing a lot about intersectionality, veganism, and
Mhm.
all these other social justice issues. I feel
Mhm.
like I don't really hear that much about that topic anymore. What's your take these days?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it was such a major tenet of a lot of my political science education. We talked ad nauseum about intersectionality. And so when I started to see it break into broader cultural consciousness, it was a little odd. Like, oh, we're using lingo from my first year race and gender class. But yeah, it's an interesting point. There was sort of a moment where the internet seemed very freaked out about postmodernism, and there was a lot of discussion around these kinds of things. And now it has devolved and regressed into there's a lot of very well argued anti feminist rhetoric out there, very smart women who are kind of carrying that argument forward that feminism is what destroys what really makes women happy. And what really makes women happy is to be at the center of the family and to have all of this traditional authority. And it goes beyond just the trad wife tropes. And it's coming from people who are very thoughtful, and the arguments are very, this is like the Phyllis Schlafly type kind of argumentation it's done very, very well. And I'm watching that become a little more ascendant. And I wonder about the consequences of that for bringing attention to vegan issues too, because for me feminism was a huge part of veganism. I would have stayed vegetarian probably forever without the feminist piece, because it was recognizing that these are female bodies that are receiving the majority of this abuse. I mean, obviously the male bodies are being abused as well, but for the cheese that I loved and thought that I could never give up, that is a product of forced insemination and then removing this baby from its mother and then repeatedly raping and stealing this female body's baby. So I mean, for me, the penny really dropped for veganism after vegetarianism in a big way with feminist consciousness. And so I don't know what that means if we're going into an era that really looks at feminism as the root of all of our social ills, that kind of argument may not carry as much rhetorical weight anymore, and can't reach people like me. People may still be vegetarian, which is better than nothing, but just cut off one of our lines of effective rhetoric.
Very interesting. I'm seeing a lot more religion, like old-fashioned exorcism.
Catholicism is having a moment. Yes.
Yeah, I was raised Catholic, and so it's really.
I would expect that there would be a giant hangover and backlash to the craziness of woke run wild there for a decade or so. And so some of this is just cultural correction, and I don't expect it to have any more enduring power. And I think you're going to just continue to see, just like you've always seen the culture wars sort of oscillate, that these two things, neither of them is defeated for good. Neither of them has gone, neither of them has triumphed. They're always kind of in tension, and they have the shadow of their nemesis, which is always in the wings and ready to come back. So probably in another 10 years, we'll be having another feminist moment. I don't know. I had a dream last night about full-blown nuclear apocalypse, so I don't know.
Right. Well, this is a quote that's been attributed both to Niels Bohr, the physicist, and also to Yogi Berra, to whom lots of quotes are attributed. But it goes, "Predictions are hard, especially about the future."
Yeah.
I rest in that one. We'll see. So all we can do is carry on, stay strong, stay true, try to plant those seeds of consciousness where we can outside our bubble. For myself, I know that it is good for me to be outside my bubble, even if it's often not pleasant. But again, we're the lucky ones, as I see it. We can look ourselves in the mirror, and we're nourishing our bodies with actual food rather than the products of torture and suffering. So yeah. What are we going to do? But carry on. But it's good to have the community, good to have the posse.
Yeah. How is the Vegan Peace group going? I have a conflict that night, so I haven't been able to.
It's great. Yeah. Good. It's really nice to reinstate that. And for myself, especially in my early days as a vegan, I really kind of craved that sort of connection, just a place where I could talk about these issues and
totally
get some connection, kind of like in the 12-step communities, even though we're not addicted to something unhealthy or detrimental, where we just actually care about other living beings.
It was so huge for me. I was part of the I listened to a podcast called Vegan Freak when I first was
yes, I remember Vegan Freak.
And they had a community, a very kind of early internet, online community with message boards and virtual gatherings and things. That was so important for me at that point, because I was so isolated. My boyfriend was really hostile toward my veganism. So I think it really is important for people to have those spaces. So everyone should go hang out.
Yay. Agreed. Yes. All right. Well, as always, we close every episode by taking 30 seconds of silence for all the suffering animals, human and non-human, who desire, as we all do, safety, happiness, and the freedom to live out their lives without interference. So Jen, I invite you to join me in 30 seconds of silence for the animals, and we'll conclude with the sound of the bell. Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Posse. See you next time. Until then, stay strong and stay true.